Good morning and welcome to the Fire in the Belly. We have another boardroom talk with the outstanding Pat Slattery. So good morning, Pat.
Good morning, Pete. Great to be here.
Listen, thanks very much for coming on. I appreciate your time and appreciate your input here. So today we're going to be talking about the topic being the power of experience. And you are a man of 25 plus years experience in this field alone, and let alone everything else. So Pat, tell us, what is it all about, the power of experience?
The power of experience. Wow. Again, when you mentioned this to me, thinking about the power of experience, there's going to be so many different areas that we could cover when it comes to experience. So I'm going to try and cover it as much as I can possibly cover based on what I'm thinking that people want, because there's multiple ways to have experiences and multiple areas to have experiences in. So people are going to have differences of opinions on experience, and hopefully I'm going to cover today that what most people would like to know about. I'm sure I could get into different other experiences too that we can discuss maybe at a future date and get an understanding of that. But when we talk about the power of experience, I often ask people, do you like having experiences? Right? And most people go, yeah, and I say, or do you like having experiences that you enjoy? Right? So when we start thinking about experience, I mean, you've got to look at time as being part of the experience as well, and the time that has passed. And you said, look, 25 years experience in what I'm doing now, but I believe it goes on a bit more than that. I believe it's, I'm hitting on almost 50 years of age, and I reckon I have almost 50 years of experience, right? And when we understand in life, when we think about our life, what we have to ask ourselves is, what has experience taught us? And my opinion, and I'm only going to share my opinions here today for people. So this is just how I see it. And again, I'm going to try and take the science out of this and make it as simple as absolutely possible as I can. So maybe the people can resonate with this. But for me, I think my understanding of what I've seen is life has, our experience in our lives has showed us what we like, and it has showed us what we don't like, right? It has showed us how to trust, how not to trust, and it has showed us how to create expectations. And it has showed us many, many things, and so much has turned up for people when it comes to the experiences. And it has taught people how to be fearful, how to be fearless, how to be careful. And it hasn't taught too many people how to be careless. They kind of figure that one out on their own, right? But that's part of the experience. But again, let me see. If I was to give you a definition of experience, we would say that it's a fact or a state that of having been affected by or gained knowledge through observation or participation, right? Or experience is something that we have personally encountered, undergone, or maybe lived through. And also, you can liken experience to the events that make up the conscious part of a community or a nation or humankind generally, okay? And experience is also the act or process of directly perceiving events or reality. So we can touch a little bit more in that. So there's lots of different areas in life that we experience. And when we go back, and you got to say, well, we've all had the experience of birth, okay? So you have the experience of birth, of time, of space, sensation, physical experience. We have experiences of family, of friendship, of love, play. We've experienced change. Some of us have experienced adulthood. Some of us haven't got there just yet, right? You get the experience of community, of culture, of pain, of nature, of problems, spirituality, beliefs, joy, fear, hate, work, happiness, love, mortality. Now, when we start thinking about all those experiences, we look at all those areas in life that we experience, we all have independent experiences in all those areas. Some of them you like and some of them you don't. You can easily identify some of the experiences as I start to bring it up. If I was to talk about it, you've experienced logic, right, or imagination, or emotion. And sometimes when you've experienced sickness or pain, right? So when people hear these words, it gets them it brings them back to a memory of something. No, we could say you've experienced nature, and that could bring you a nice memory, right? So this is all part of your experience, and you have to perceive your experience as it works for you. So again, something I ask people a lot of my seminars. Maybe I'll ask you this question, Pete. You can answer the question, right? But have you ever tried to doing something, something that you truly wanted, like going after a goal, maybe building a business, or maybe you tried to plan something, but after lots and lots of different attempts, and possibly a lot of time and a lot of resources spent, it didn't work out as you were hoping, or maybe you didn't get the outcome you wish for. Has that ever happened for you?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? Even though you put everything into it that you had into it,
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't get what you wanted.
No.
And that's experience.
True.
Most people look at that as failure.
Mm.
Most people look at that and think, I failed, it didn't work in my favor. And let me say this, your experience is what you get when what you wanted didn't work out in the first place. Okay. So start thinking about the things that you've either achieved or not achieved, the things that didn't work out, and think about what experience I've gotten from it. So if we were going to think about that, we have to think about how do we learn from experience, or learn by experience. And I have to quote Voltaire, right? And a wonderful quote that says, "Is there anyone so wise as to learn by the experience of others?" Right? Is there anyone so wise as to learn by the experience of others? And let me, I suppose, elaborate a little bit more into this, okay? Because in my opinion, I think it's so important that you pay attention to those that have been there before you, those that have tested the market. And for me, history is simply the sharing of experiences. And there's so much history that has gone before you. And if you allow yourself to learn and go through that process of understanding, it's a learning process, and experience comes from part of what you're learning. Now, we also can look at failed experiences, right? Because there's a learning there too. Failed experience could be things that you may have tried that didn't work out in your favor. Okay. So what often happens when you go through this type of experience, it leaves you with something. Okay. And the question you have to ask yourself is, what does this experience leave you with? If something that doesn't work out in your favor, how does it leave you feeling? And as a feeling is what it leaves you with. Does it leave you feel beat up or burnt out or miserable or useless or stupid? And you have to be very conscious of what your experience is leaving you with, because this is where the learning process comes into play. And you got to learn, you discover so much more about yourself also when you go through these different types of experiences. Now, when we talk about learned experiences, because this is what they are, your learned experiences are your own personal learning from your past experiences that have taught you what you like and what you don't like. Now, I know we've discussed this in the past, because everybody loves experience that they like, right? Everyone likes going through those experiences, okay? But there will be times that there will be experiences that you don't like. Now, you might call them circumstances or situations, or things outside of your control, and maybe they temporarily are. But for most people that I've discovered over, again, I've been at this a long time, right? But I've discovered that most people try to avoid the experiences that they don't like. You welcome the ones that you do like, and you try to avoid the ones that you don't like, which is smart, by the way. But there are going to be times that you're going to end up going through an experience. And when most people try to, you might be in a situation that there's something happening and it's creating a whole series of emotions or different senses, and it's, creating a different way of thinking, a different way of feeling that you feel discomfortable with or unfulfilled with. But usually when people are going through an experience that they're not comfortable or don't like, maybe there's a change in their life, they change in their lifestyle, change in their business, change in their job, change in their relationships. And again, for most people, they duck and they dive. They do everything to avoid it. They'll try and get around it. They'll try and get over it. They try and get under it, but anything to avoid that experience. And the reality is, when you're in an experience, there is only one way to get through it, and that is to go through it. Because if you're in it and it's happening and you're ducking and diving and you're doing your absolute best to get around it or to avoid it, not deal with it, then you're staying in that experience for longer. Because there is only one way to have an experience, and that is to go through it. So you got to ask yourself sometimes, are you spending too much time in an experience that you dislike or you're just comfortable? And maybe you got to allow yourself to sit with it and allow yourself to go through it and have the experience. As long as you go through it with the intention of treating it as another learned experience. What are you going to learn from it? And I assure you this, because I've been through many, many experiences like this, and I know so many people that have. And when they go through it, they generally look back and say, what was all that about? They can look back in the experiences. And right now, the world is going through an experience. And we've been through experiences like this in ways. And some people have been through worse experiences. And, it's amazing for most people who are watching. You may have spoken to somebody in the past who shared their experience, and you might look at them flabbergasted and say, how did you get through that experience? And again, if you understand that that's what it is an experience, then you're capable of coming through anything. You're capable of overcoming any challenge. And you're capable of learning from it and applying the knowledge that you've taken from it. Some experiences take longer to get over than others, and that's okay. It just is what it is. And once you accept that that's all it is, and that's all it was an experience, then you probably have gotten through it at that point. Now, you may have to rebuild something based on a negative or bad experience you had, and that's okay too, because that's part of coming out of it and coming through that experience. And sometimes you have got to ask people, I'm sure you've heard this before, the thing that worries you right now, the experience you're having right now, will it really matter 5 years from now? Will it really matter 10 years from now? And if the answer is no, then just let yourself go through it. Right? It's not the end of the world. Right? And and I know for some people it can feel that way. So I don't want to dismiss those negative experiences. We're going to talk about positive experiences as well. But I think the one thing you got to understand about me is I'm going to give it you every way, so you get a proper understanding. Because if you try to avoid it and think that positive thinking is the only thing, to get you through, it's the best way and the only way, there is something more. And we got to be thinking more about it too. So we allow ourselves to move away from the other bad experience or the behaviors that are creating certain experiences, and we go beyond just the thinking. Okay.
I'm just curious there, Pat. I mean, you sort of made a little bit of a link there between experience and memory, and I'm kind of wondering, are they intrinsically linked? And is your memory trustworthy?
Well, okay. Let me, yeah, because I'm going to touch on that. Let me touch on that a little bit, right? But I want you to remember something. All of you are novices. Okay. You're a novice every time you do something that you've never done before. Okay. Now we will talk about how your memory and the difference between your memory and your experience and how they work hand in hand, right? But I kind of want to lead into that for you so we'll get a clearer understanding, or in a way I think I can translate it, and I hope I translate it in a way that you guys get it. But I want you to remember that you're not every time you do something you've never done before. Now, generally when people are novices, and people get ideas, right? Because we're living in a world right now that is full of ideas and wonderful opportunity. And when we think about having experiences, we have to touch on all the experiences, right? So some people come in there, they appear very confident or overconfident. And I will say to you, as a novice, overconfidence is the painful pitfall of gullible inexperience. Okay. Now, pain, right? The experience of pain awaits when you feel like you know, but you don't. Sometimes you may hear me use the term the illusion of knowledge. You ever met people who wear this placard or carries a big placard around with them all the time that says, I know? They feel like they know it all. And you can't possibly know it all because you're a novice. Okay. Now, as a novice, again, remember you're going to feel some pain. You're going to have different experiences when you do something that you haven't done before. By the way, not all bad experiences, but I want you to be cautious on this one in terms of the overconfidence, okay, or the illusion of knowledge. Don't assume that you know it all. Now, here's the difference between novices and experienced novices, right? Now, experienced novices are people with a track record and know how to learn. We're still novices because we're consistently learning. So if you have that illusion of knowledge, you think you know it all just because you have lots of experience, then let me say this to you, that's gullible inexperience, in my opinion. So for me, this is why I'm on a journey. I'm going to learn. I'm going to consistently learn for as long as I can possibly learn. I never claim to know it all, and this is why I say to people here, you got to question everything I'm saying. You got to take what you feel for you. This is just my opinion, based on my experiences as an experienced novice. Okay. Now, and I want to say as an experienced novice, because again, I'm still a novice. There are new things that I need to learn, new ways of approaching different things. And we'll understand how our memory has played a part in this very shortly. Because, and before we go any further, I want to talk about some of the dangers of inexperience. Okay. And one of the dangers of inexperience, and this is really important, particularly in this current time, because there's so much change happening and there are so much magnificent ideas out there. And there's so much, there's so many novices, respectfully, when I mean this respectfully, who believe their experience as novices because they have a thought or they may have read one book. And I mean this respectfully. I don't want to be disrespectful, but I want you to understand the dangers of inexperience, because the one danger for me is that it's so easy to be misled, right? And inexperience is blinded by unverified optimism. Now, for example, first-time investors, they can get very starry-eyed. And usually when they do, and they're full of optimism based on what they think may work for them, have a very unpleasant experience. Or those who may want to start a new project, someone who's envisioned something for a long time, planned it out in their minds, and even visualized it. Even visualized it to the point that it became real. Now, the issue with this is that most people get excited and try something once that they've never tried before. And when it doesn't work out as planned, they have a negative experience. So this is what inexperience can bring. This is one of the dangers. But because they were expecting a positive experience and didn't get it, they become disillusioned. So inexperience can bring disillusion if we don't understand how to treat it as a learned experience. I hope I'm making sense, and I hope I'm not talking in riddles, right? Now, here's something as well that some people may challenge me on here, right? Because one of the dangers of inexperience is people decide very quickly. They make snap decisions, right? Now, inexperience may mean that they're unaware of potential pitfalls, but they blissfully move forward or blindly move forward, maybe, right? And again, respectfully, naivety believes that the path forward is easy when it's hard. But this is an area, by the way, I'm always very cautious of, okay? Because I hear so many people say, and I've read more self-help books than most people, right? And I've worked with thousands of speakers, and I've met thousands of speakers, and I listen to people, and I'm not always in agreement with them, right? Because on mature reflection, my experience has taught me something different, right? Because and again, I want to be very cautious, because I hear so many people say, make that decision immediately, then make the decision immediately that you will do whatever it is that is presented you, then go all in. Right. And it reminds me, many years ago, I used to swim in a river, right? We used to, near Ardagh Crusher power station, we used to dive off the rocks, and one guy, and we used to dive off the bridge. It was about 40 feet up over the water. It was crazy, right? But one guy, and we were trying to give advice, I hadn't done it before, and he took off and he dived close to the edge and hit the rocks, right? And thankfully he survived, but he'd done a lot of damage. And it was his, the enthusiasm he had to want to do it. And he made that decision. I'm going all in. I'm just going to make it happen, when he actually didn't have all the information, right? So I got to say to people, this is why I will talk a little bit more about finding people who have tested the market. Find people who have done it before. Now, what I've discovered is that most people that I have met, by the way, when they take this approach, don't usually get the outcomes that they desire. Simply, maybe it's because they've come up with new ideas. They've tried to invent the wheel in some cases. Everybody's trying to think of how to be original, how to come up with the new idea, the smart idea, the clever idea, right? What I can tell you from experience, it is easier when you tap into the experience of those that have gone down this road before you. Again, experience has taught me that. Time. Don't waste your money. Don't waste your resources. You can make some little tweaks and change some things, but the reality is, can we really reinvent the wheel? I don't think so. And people have been trying this for hundreds, maybe thousands of years, but we have something that works. So rather than trying to do it and with enthusiasm to jump in, take your time, right? Do a little bit of due diligence and make sure that you're on track and you've got some bit of an idea based on the experience that has been left here before you. Remember, history is made up of experiences. Now, here's what often happens too, by the way. This is the danger of inexperience. Here's the good news. You actually may get some wins. You may come up with this new idea and you may come out and feel puffed up, right? And feel proud of yourself and encouraged and, full of wonder and magnificence that you've achieved it, right? That you've succeeded. What I will say to you is that one win doesn't always mean that you've completely succeeded. Because now, when I say this, inexperienced novices haven't learned that humility applies most when you actually succeed. Okay. Now, and the reason I want to share this, I think it's so important that you share your experience so that they serve others, not to become so puffed up that you think you're magnificent, that you're better than anybody because you've achieved and you become so successful. No, don't get me wrong. I want you to celebrate your wins. This is important that you do, but you don't get so puffed up that you think you're greater than anybody else because you've succeeded. This is what I call not letting ego get in the way. You like that word, Pete? Get in the way. Usually those that puff up, as we say, start to experience disconnect from people. And they start to lose support from others. And again, you had one good win. You may be on the journey of many, many more. You may come across some struggles and you will need support. And the importance of building support and building your team from other people as you go forward, experience will teach you this too, that you need to keep building people up and you need to have the support of people, no matter what it is you choose to do. People say, well, what I do for a living, I don't need people. I can make a lot of money. Okay. I don't care who you are. You want to be liked. Right. So, again, you need to learn that humility applies most when you succeed at something. We all know people who have seen champions. We've seen, world champions in boxing and world champions in all kinds of sport, actually, in rugby and soccer. And we always remember the person who stops to talk to people at concerts, rock stars, people who stop and pay attention to the people because of their successes, and they realize the importance of people. Now, again, another danger of inexperience is jealousy. Right? For the lack of inexperiences, most people feel jealous kind of instinctively. You'd often have heard people saying, and not anybody who's watching here, because you're perfect people, but people who have said this, why did she get promoted when I'm more qualified? Right? Now, the blindness of jealousy prolongs ignorance and magnifies agony. That's not a nice experience, is it? So the danger for experienced novices is the false belief that skill in one area automatically transfers to others. Okay, just because you're good at one thing doesn't mean you're good at others. And you may have to learn something new. And maybe that's an experience that you're discomfort, or that you're uncomfortable with, should I say. But you may be an experience that you have to go through. So, and again, this is for experienced novices. Because they've achieved something in one area, that they think it can transfer to other areas. And that's not necessarily the truth, right? Because the perception of skill prevents development. Okay, the perception of skill prevents development. So let's talk, because we've talked about inexperience, let's talk about some of the powers of experience. Okay, different areas are powers of experience are you have healthy caution. Healthy caution. Now, I don't mean be cautious to the point that you sit and procrastinate and do nothing. Okay, healthy caution means that like, the weathered captain feels a little uneasy when the seas are calm, right? Because you know the calm before the storm, right? As you can learn from painful past mistakes, they can create healthy caution. You start to strategize differently, you start thinking differently as you start out in your approach. Remember, sometimes slow and steady wins a race, right? So you proceed with caution. Now, proceeding with caution doesn't mean you go that slow. It just means that you have an expectation, right, that things may happen and you prepare for things that may happen. You're prepared for the unexpected sometimes. That's what healthy caution has taught you. Now, as we talk about that, another one of the powers of experience is not knowing. Knowing that you don't know it all. So therefore, you're open and prepared to listen. Some of the most influential people I've met are fantastic listeners, and they don't assume that they know it all. And when you understand that you may not know it all and you pay attention, you may actually discover something new. And it may only be that one little thing that can make a huge impact. So people with gray hairs wonder about what they don't know. Experienced leaders know that learning begins with not knowing. Confident ignorance is painful. So confident ignorance is painful. And I mean this respectfully. This is when we hear people say we're winging it or bluffing it. Or maybe they're confident they have an idea and they're confident it will work out. And they share that with level of confidence, but they don't have the answers to the questions that come after. They don't have the knowledge and they try and bluff it. Now, this may sound contradictory in ways because I'm also a believer in start it and fix it as you go on. But that means you have to accept that there's a not knowing part to what you're doing. Starting it and fixing as you go on means accepting all that. That's what the experienced novice does. It doesn't mean that they put on the blinkers and think only one way without gathering the knowledge. You pick it up along the way and you bring it with you. And you stay focused on what it is you want to do. Like again, you got to have a thick skin, right? And seasoned leaders understand that inexperience doesn't understand. People will judge you out of ignorance. So you have to have a thick skin. People who haven't traveled this road before you, right? For those you have kids, you know this. Teenagers especially, they think you haven't got a clue. You have no idea. You're away with the fairies. You're a dinosaur, right? You'll hear all that nonsense. Then you have other people who come in with clever ideas, who think they're smarter than you, and they judge you out of ignorance. And the reality is, by the way, I mean this respectfully, the majority of people in your society, in your community, in your environment will judge you out of ignorance. And these are people who tell you that you're crazy, you're nuts, you're silly to do what you want to do. Okay. And you have to have a thick skin. This is going to be part of your experience, as having that thick skin, because the reality is most of those people who are judging you out of ignorance and I say out of ignorance simply means that they haven't traveled this road before either. They haven't done it. So why would you allow their experience interfere with your own experience? Right? Or even maybe interfere with an experience that you haven't experienced yet. And that word keeps coming in a lot, right? So it sounds like a tongue twister. But you got to have a thick skin, okay? Because you will be judged, and that judgment will come from ignorance, mostly because of the people that have not traveled this road before. So you got to grow a thick skin. Experience will give you that, and this is the power of understanding experience. Again, the power of experience is steady progress, right? Making sure that it's steady progress. You will have heard me use the term consistently, saying to people, you need to be consistent, but you need to be patiently persistent. And you make steady progress. And you know it's a process. And when you're on a process, experience will teach you that there's no get rich quick, there's no fast answer, there's no immediate, there's no magic wand. It takes steady progress, right? So there's a great saying, is it, what's it? A wrinkly brow knows that reckless action hurts and shortcuts are dead ends, right? So a wrinkly brow knows that reckless action hurts and shortcuts are dead ends. And again, the power of experience means that you have respect for decisions, that you respect everyone, and you respect all decisions, whether they're good or bad. You have a couple of toddlers, Pete, right? And you have to be respectful to understand that your toddlers don't grasp the implications of pulling on tablecloths. When they make that decision, they don't grasp the implication. So it's not about judging them or punishing them or scolding them. They have to have that experience. And if they have no implication of what that experience is going to go or the outcome is going to be, they're going to make those mistakes. And if you understand the power of experience, it'll allow you to sit back and have respect for people making decisions and that they're their decisions. And sometimes you have to let them go through it and learn it. You can't tell everybody all of the time what you think they should do. They have to experience it for themselves. Again, we look at this with people who have kids and they're literally trying to throw their arms around them and cotton wool them. And when the reality is you have to let them have their own experiences. They have to experience their own failures, right? If they get dropped off the team, they have to experience that too. Because if they didn't put in the work, there's an implication in not putting in the work. And that's part of their experience. It's part of learning. So, again, when you have respect for decisions, you have patience with those that are learning. I have met so many people who have experienced certain things, and particularly in personal growth or business growth, and they tend to not have patience. And because they tend to forget that the person who's coming is just starting the journey that you might be on for 10, 12, 15, 20 years. And if you really understand your respect for decisions and you have that level of experience, you will learn how to be patient with those that are learning. You'll have patience with those that are pulling people away from you too, by the way. Now, this is going to happen a lot as you start to grow. And as you start, and I understand even in my industry, as you start to grow, as you start to do things with more people start to pull people away from you, right? People start going, oh, don't podcast, we can do our own. Why don't you come with me instead? Why don't we don't need that, right? Or Pat Slattery seminars, let's go and do our own. Why are you coaching? Why do we need him? Let's do it. I can do it. I can show you everything he knows. And that's usually coming from inexperience, because the experienced people don't treat people that way. Now, this will happen a lot. And usually the inexperienced novice will usually react to this. And they start fighting people and they argue with people, are saying, no, you shouldn't do this, and they start becoming bitter. Whereas the experienced novice will usually be more proactive. And you can sit back. I often say to people, sit loose in the saddle for a while, because it always comes, the experienced novice knows that the person with the inexperience, with the illusion of knowledge, thinking they can do what they do, can't usually deliver because they haven't allowed themselves to build up enough experience in that certain area. Does this make sense? So if you happen to find people in your industry who are trying to pull people away from you, don't react. Be more proactive. Keep stepping up. Again, when you understand the power of experience, it's an independent thought in the face of multiple options, right? There's going to be, no matter what's going on, you're going to have multiple options, but you're going to have your own independent thought once you face these multiple options. And in my opinion, quiet reflection is the source of independent thought, or mature reflection is a source of independent thought. You've got to turn off the noise. Turn off the noise, because everybody wants to share their opinion and their experience. So find that space, take that time. We call it meditation or visualization. Sometimes it's just sitting with it and having that time for quiet reflection. And during quiet reflection, or again, the term I use is mature reflection, I believe this is the source of independent thought. This allows you to think for yourself. And that's what the experienced novice does, is they take that time. So now, if we're going to talk about independent thought, you've got to think about what questions can enable independent thought. So here are some of the questions that I ask myself. First one I ask is, what don't I know? Whatever situation, whatever's going on, whatever's happening, or if there's an outcome that I want to achieve or something I want to make happen, I'm not going to assume that I know it all. So I'm going to ask myself, what don't I know about this situation or this experience that I'm going through? What don't I know? And again, quiet reflection tends to bring up that independent thought, and it tends to find the answer for this. Because I'm not asking anybody's opinion, I'm searching for myself right now. Then the second question I ask is, what's important to know? Because what I don't know, I'll come up with lots of things. The mind is your mind is magnificent. They keep coming up with lots of answers, right? And then with all the answers I have, I go, well, okay, with all these answers, which of these are important for me to know? Because they're not all going to be important. So I've got to figure out what's important for me to know. Now, the third one for me, and I can say this to you, again, I'm writing it in my book at the moment. And this to me is certainly the most important thing that I learned to have experience in. And the third question I ask is, who has the experience? Who are the most important or most experienced people in this area, and this challenge or experience that I'm going through, or this thing I want to overcome, or this thing I want to achieve? Who are the most important people? And let me say this to you. The most experienced people love to share their knowledge. Most experienced people love to share their knowledge. So doesn't it make sense to ask people who have experience to find an experienced novice, not just a novice? Because every novice has an opinion. Okay, so that's the third question I ask myself, is who has experience? Then the fourth question I ask myself is, what might go wrong? What might go wrong? Because if I figure out what may go wrong on this journey, then I'm thinking about the solutions. I start finding solutions. I start to prepare for something that I haven't, because if it's a new role, if it's something I haven't done before, how am I going to know what's going to go wrong? I don't have that illusion anymore that everything will always be perfect. I expect it to be perfect, by the way, but only because I ask these questions. Right? So sometimes we often hear the term, I got to get the objections out of the way. What might go wrong? There may be objections. What objections? How do I handle those? So these questions, and they're not just simply one question, they prompt other questions. And they prompt me to find a solution when I sit in quiet reflection. Okay. So what might go wrong? And the fifth question that I ask myself is, who might be impacted by this decision? Because I'm very conscious of my people. When I say my people, they're not my people, I don't own them, but the people who are in my circle of influence, the people who are important, the people who I want to share these experiences with, whether it's a new business, whether it's success, whether it's wealth, whether it's love, whether it's happiness, who might be infected by this decision or impacted by this decision. So I put thought into that. And that's how I can, again, on mature reflection, sometimes I change my mind and think maybe this is not something I want to experience. And I can make better decisions because I have independent thought. Now, again, I want you to understand there's a big difference between analyzing. Okay, I'm not analyzing something. I'm looking for the way forward. And I'm looking for that feeling that I'm going to get when I experience this. And it has to take a lot of boxes for me in order for me to have, or be, or do whatever it is I choose to do. Now, there's a quote from the Chinese philosopher Confucius that says, When I hear, I forget. When I see, I remember. But when I do, I understand. And more than 2,000 years later, his wisdom still holds true. So when we look at right now, we've got to think of, okay, different experiences and think about what people are looking for. And I understand people want life experiences, they want business experience, they want to experience wealth, they want to experience so much. It's a very fast-paced world that we're living in right now. And in the marketing world, it's like a cliche now. You hear the saying that millennials crave experiences, right? It's a new term, it's a new buzzword that I'm hearing a lot, right? That millennials crave experiences. But the truth is, we all do. We all crave experiences. That's why we travel. That's why we go to concerts or amusement parks, or you go horse riding, you go to the mountains, you might go shark diving. We all crave those experiences. We are programmed to look for new experiences. Now, there's a great lot of talk in the advertising world about the growth of experiential marketing, and with a very good reason, and it's one of the fastest growing areas. So let me share this, how experiences and how your experiences are being used, okay? Because like most of the time when people talk about this, they talk about the discussions are, I suppose, centered around the talking of growing budgets and how to measure the return on investment, or showing examples of really cool campaigns, right? Now, these are certainly worthy topics, because if people are on here, if you're looking to market yourself, market your products, your business, your whatever it is, and people, because a lot of people ask about marketing and how do we experience, how do we get the right experiences, how do we get this? So I'm going to touch on this one, okay? Now, because the things I've just spoken about, the growing budgets, the measuring the right return on investment, or showing examples of how things are really cool, they are worthy topics. But there's one thing that I'm discovering that not that many people are talking about, and that is experiential marketing. So why is experiential marketing so powerful, right? And once we get an understanding of it, the novelty of an experience makes the memories stronger, right? Now, you asked about this a moment ago. So the novelty of an experience makes the memory stronger. So let's look a little bit deeper, okay? Every day you get up, most days, right? You get up, you put your clothes on. Right now, some people are on Zoom, they're not putting their clothes on, but right. But for most days, let's say in a normal everyday life, and the way things are, you get up, you put your clothes on, you might say, okay, I'm heading for work. You walk to the train station, or the bus, you might grab a coffee when you're waiting. You grab a coffee at the kiosk, and then you get on the train, and you take the train to work. Then you get off the train, you walk to the office, etc., etc. Right? Now, most people's daily lives comprise of activities that are familiar and kind of routine. Okay, you could probably close your eyes and stand a fair chance of getting most of them done without any issue. They almost happen habitually, automatically. Okay, now we don't pay a lot of attention to experiences, and that's what they are. And we don't actually remember them very well. Yet they're all experiences, right? Now, events that are different outside of your ordinary routine will actually attract your. They stand out because they are different. Okay, and it turns out that we also remember them better because of their difference, right? So our brains are hardwired to remember new experiences because of how they make us feel. And the feeling comes from memory, right? Your feelings are coming from a memory, your experience of a memory. So, and I can ask you a question, this, Peter, ask anybody on who's on here. I'm going to ask you two things. Have you ever dined at a restaurant that you had to tell everybody about afterwards?
Absolutely.
Right? The food was amazing, the service was incredible, the atmosphere was so relaxing, they took their time, you felt like the table would be yours all night, they were so friendly, etc., etc. You've done that, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, and I bet you most people have. Or you might have been on a holiday that you had that when you come back, you can't wait, you're talking about it for months. right? You're telling everybody about the location of your resort, the entertainment that was laid on, the beach was really white, soft sand, it was warm, and the food was exceptional. We met some wonderful people. We had a great selection of wine that was very reasonably priced, and there were so many fun games around the pool, right? You've done that. And most people do that. So what are people actually sharing? When they tell you this, when you come back and talk to me about that restaurant, if I asked you to recommend one, and you come in and I said to you, recommend a good restaurant, your favorite restaurant, you'll come in and start telling me all this. Or if I'm thinking about going on a holiday, where would you recommend? You immediately will come to this one that you couldn't wait to talk about. And what you're actually sharing is your experience, right? And we have got to understand the power of this when it comes to marketing your business or marketing you. And listen, respectfully, you're consistently marketing yourself, whether you realize it or not, because everybody wants people to like them, right? Some people go, I don't want people to like me. We won't get into that one, but I don't believe that to be the truth. Okay, everybody has to get something. So people want people to like them. So, people are going to respectfully judge you based on their experience of you. So now when we understand the experiential marketing, how it works and how it works in your favor, and why it's so important, because shared experiences allow us to build social connections. When you meet people for the first time, do you question and grill them? Or do you start sharing stories? Tell them a little bit about yourself. Tell them a little bit about your experience. If they ask you the question, they ask you, right? Or you might ask somebody a question and they share their own experiences, their past, their memories. So it helps them build social connections. You start finding things in common with people then, and people start sharing their story. You go, oh yeah, I get that. I've been there. I recognize this, or so forth, etc. Right? You start finding things in common. Human beings are social animals, right? We all know this. So we have to understand the power of that experience. So it's a key component of who we are, and the most important, one of the most important building blocks of our personality and our society is being a social being and building social connections. Part of the way that we build and develop these social connections is through shared experiences. There were some studies that were done at Yale, I think it was Yale University, that's that state that sharing an experience with another person without communicating amplifies one's experience. Okay, so sharing an experience with another person without communicating amplifies one's experience. Now we can look at that in both ways and think, well, I could have an experience of you based on how you translated who you are, your information, how you translated your experiences, how you didn't translate them, even communicate them. And people make judgments on this, believe it or not. Now, in this modern digital age, the idea of sharing an experience has taken on a whole new meaning. Because now, in addition to actually taking part in the experience with someone else, most people think about how they might share this experience on social media, right? So people think that's not that important, this social connection and sharing the experiences. And you just need to go on Facebook to see, why do people take photographs of what they're just having for dinner? They're sitting there Instagramming their dinner, and they're trying to be building a relationship with people, right? So people like to share their experience. And again, because who you are, who you are perceived to be, is based on the experience that you're sharing. Okay, so when we talk about as who you are and why this experimental and experiential sharing is so important, because this, I suppose, people now seek out social currency. Actually, people look, you want to call it, right, because it contributes to their own self of well-being and fulfillment. I feel like, well, if I tell everyone how great my life is and I show it here on social media, and more people will like me, and I feel more fulfilled, etc. And then there are other people who are on there looking at this, looking for that level of fulfillment too. They want to see other people's stories, and they say, "Wow, I wonder how." I don't want people are craving other people's experiences, right? And hoping that they can build their own from what they learn from others. That makes sense? Now, here's the thing, right? Because on social media, most people say some people are boastful or they're this or that or whatever, right? But if we really understand the reason, right, that we are biologically wired to talk about ourselves is because it is pleasurable talking about ourselves, right? I don't know anybody who really doesn't enjoy talking about themselves, sharing good experiences. Now, Pete, you may liken this to ego, right? Because people that speak about general experiences use that word, for example. They're sharing their experiences because it is pleasurable to speak about themselves. That's all. It doesn't always have to be ego. And yet, there may also be some people who don't enjoy the experience of listening to someone speaking that uses the word I, right? As in this case, they're not talking about them. And therefore, the experience is not as enjoyable, right? So when people come on and we say I, people get had enough of that. Yet the person who's talking about themselves is really enjoying the experience. Now, I'm not saying that you would ever think that of people, Pete, right? Because you are perfect, but there may be some people who get this, where they're in a conversation with people, they go, "Does this person ever stop talking about themselves? I wish they'd shut up and give me a chance to talk about me," right? But again, the experienced novice understands this. You understand that if somebody wants to talk about that they're excited and they're excited about themselves and it's pleasurable for them, and that's okay. And that's why the experienced novice can actually be a good listener. And the power of that experience is invaluable. The power of having the experience of knowing without judgment that if somebody wants to talk about themselves, that it's pleasurable for them, and it may actually be bringing them through something, and they have to learn a different way of communicating. Now, the other side of that is the experienced novice. The power of that experience, knowing this, that you can actually share your story and incorporate other people into that experience. This is exceptional marketing. Okay, this is exceptional marketing. So it is found that when we share about ourselves, our thoughts, our experiences, the reward seeking part of the brain gets activated. Just start getting excited, right? Starts getting excited. And again, it's the same part which gets activated when we get food or money, right? We talk a higher social currency. Most people do. Now, I know on the flip side that some people might say, well, I don't. I'm always talking negative about myself and beating myself down and a whole lot. Yeah, but maybe you're getting some attention for that, right? Maybe you're still getting social currency because people are paying attention. But it's not, in my opinion, productive attention, and it's not going to be constructive. So you're going to change that. So again, looking at how you can use experiences to your advantage. Now, again, with specific regard to experiential marketing, studies have actually shown that 98% of consumers create digital or social content at events. Now, an event can be anything. Doesn't necessarily mean a concert or a seminar, a conference. It could be an event in your bar, in your business, and meeting somebody at the counter, and how the process of going through your store or going through your services. Okay, so 98% of consumers social content. People crave new and interesting experience to share on social media. And experiential programs give them exactly what they need. So, and I'm gonna elaborate a bit more on this and shortly. I want to get you to understand the power of this and the power of having that experience, because experience has taught me this. Okay, um, psychologist Daniel Kahneman, in his peak and rule model, are experiencing selves and remembering selves perceive events differently, and how much sway that our memory have over our perception of an event. Okay, so we have our experiencing selves and our remembering selves, and they experience events differently. And again, to explain that, when we are ready to make a decision, we generally rely on our memories of an experience. Okay, so we rely on a memory of an experience when you're ready to make a decision. Our remembering self will focus on the highlights and the ending. How did the story conclude to help make that decision? Don't forget everything else that went on in between, right? So your remembering self will perceive events differently. You will remember, and you will remember the highlights and the ending and how that story concluded in order to help you make your decisions. So, for instance, whether you like him or you don't, celebrity chef Gordon Ramsay summed it all up by saying, finish with a strong dessert. Finish with a strong dessert. It is often an afterthought or left to the last minute. Since it's the last dish that your guests will taste, make sure it's memorable. And I've worked at so many events over the years, and I've worked with people who really knew this and know this. I had a great mentor from many years ago when I started working with this, like 15 years of age. I used to work in nightclubs with this man. And at the end of every night, he would tell the DJ, he'd pick specifically what he wanted played. And the energy, the song that would be on at the end of every night would lift the energy to an incredible height. He would build up, build up, build up, 4, 5, 6 songs, and boom, and the night is over. And everybody's walking out 10 feet tall. They're feeling amazing. That's what they remember. They remember how they felt when they walk out the door. They may have been dropped out of the dance, or a few guys off the dance have been refusing and things not going their way, and they might not, but the reality is they remember how they feel in the last moment walking out the door. So if you want to remember, again, when you come in, first thing to do is get something up that lifts the energy, lifts the mood. Okay. So first impressions and last impressions are what really matter. Because when you understand this, the remembering self will highlight this experience. Your memory, and we rely on the memories of our experiences. Your memory will give you the best experience. It will probably forget all the stuff that went on in between. So whatever you're doing, whatever it is that you're doing, make sure you're memorable. Social media, and we have people who are out there looking for that social currency right now. You make them feel good, they're going to share about you. You do something that's memorable, they're going to remember it. They're going to share it. That's all they remember. So many times I've spoken to so many events and I share some knowledge, some information, and people get it, at the end, I always finish on a high. And then when people come back to me and say, "Pat, what else did you cover? I can't remember. I remember this part." And they tend to remember the parts that are most memorable for them because it's a highlight for them. So whatever you do, make sure it's memorable. Make sure that you are memorable. Now, experiences create quality impressions, good experiences. Okay, good experience create quality impressions. So when we talk to the clients and we talk about creating experiential activations, it can sometimes scare people off because here's what happens: their experience of the past or the memory of the past is uh, it's going to be expensive. They start comparing it to different media channels, if you like, in different areas where they tend to cost a lot of money. Okay. But when you stop to consider the effect of these impressions, it becomes clear that you cannot value them on the same scale as other traditional media formats. The power of people and the power of people sharing their experience value on that. Okay. So the memories from your experience are stronger, they're more vivid, and they're more prominent. They feed your need to connect with others and influence future decisions. So to quote the great Voltaire, is there anyone so wise as to learn by the experience of others? right? Is there anyone so wise as to learn by the experience of others? Other people's experiences, what you choose to do, how they communicate that experience to you. Other people's experiences will determine how people apply themselves to what you do. Whether it's an experience of pain or pleasure, it doesn't matter. It's how they communicate that will help you either learn. Now, there are different types of experiences I want you to remember here. We got to go, if we go back to look at all the different areas of life that you're going to experience, all the different things that you can experience, the experience of pain, of birth, of fun, of love, of happiness, and so many different things. But again, it's all experiences, and you embrace all experiences for what they are, just experiences. Then I believe that you will probably live a more fulfilled life. You will probably be able to serve better. So experience all experiences for what they are, experiences. And they're part of your learning, they're part of your growth. I think what's really important is that you ask yourself purposely, what have I learned from this experience, both good and bad experiences? And that's the true power of experience, to be able to ask those questions. And then think, how can you ensure that everyone you meet leaves with a great experience of meeting you? This is something that's really important because for people and for personal growth. And bearing in mind, you know, an experience, you're either a novice, you're just starting out with no experience, or you're an experienced novice, because you're always going to be a novice. Because the day that you think you know it all, the day you think you have that, or the day you find this illusion of knowledge, I think that's probably the end of everything, if you like. And now, again, when you get out there and you will have experiences where you will have success based on your experience. And everybody will have that in some way, shape, or form. And, again, I remember being in a meeting within the security industry, and I think it's in almost every call here being on, I've mentioned Tony O'Callaghan, right? But we were in a meeting with him, and there was a lot of respectfully younger people coming in with new ideas, clever ideas. And to be fair, we started the meeting and somebody said, "Oh, you probably know all this." And he said, "Listen, let's assume I know nothing. Let's assume I know nothing, and let's start from the beginning." And then people were bringing their ideas to the table. And of course, he was wise enough to listen and pay attention. And there were some good ideas. There were some good approaches to ideas. May not have been necessarily good ideas, but some good approaches to ideas, if that makes sense. And and then when we kind of summarize it all, he kind of put together a proposal, and somebody goes, "Oh, that's the old way of doing it." And they were challenging it a little bit. And he said, "Listen, I have 45 years experience. And I will say this to you, if you have real experience, practiced experience, right? When I talk about learned experience, it's about learned experience to me is practiced experience, being involved, doing something, trying it, whether it worked, it didn't work, figuring out why it didn't work, how it doesn't work, then figuring out how it could work and why it should work and how to make it work. Then you're entitled to an opinion. And for me, I always seek out the market. I seek out people with experience in areas. This is something I want to do, I want to achieve. I think that's really important that people understand that. And again, that is the power of having the experience of making enough mistakes, trying to do it yourself. I knew the talk was about the power of experience, and that's kind of my experience shared, if that makes sense. But again, you've got to ask yourself purposely, what have I learned from this experience, both good and bad? And then think, how can you ensure you leaves you with a great experience of meeting you? Everyone. despite what's going on in your life, despite what may be challenging you, you have that power to create that experience, because that experience is what people will share. That's social currency. And I can tell you, experiential marketing, in my opinion, is far superior and far more profitable and lucrative than any other type of marketing, because people love to share their experiences, both good and bad. Different sites, the likes of TripAdvisor, for instance, right? People can leave reviews on almost any site now. Isn't it wonderful when you read the good reviews? And that only happens because you leave people with a great experience. So if you really get this, and you choose to create that incredible experience for other people, you will never want for anything. You will never want for anything. If it's love, then you have to share that experience of love, and you'll never want for love. Friendship, you create that experience of friendship, and you'll never want for friendship. Business, you have to create that incredible experience of customer service, and you will never want for more business. What's the feeling? What are you making people feel like? How are you making them feel when they walk away from you? And you've got to practice this and become purposeful about it. Now, people go, "Oh, I have to practice that. Is that being a bit of an imposter?" No. Of course you have to practice it. People say, "Pat, all that takes a lot of practice." Of course you have to practice it. And people go, "Yeah, but is that not me being false?" Okay. So what you've been practicing up to now is reality? If what you're doing is not working, you're well practiced at what's not working. Stop practicing that behavior. Stop practicing what it takes to create that experience, and practice, maybe create new habits that create new experiences. Do something every day to create new experiences that lifts you up, that lifts other people up. And when you do that, those experiences are part of your experience, of your life's journey, of your memory. And you can only share your experiences based on what you remember them to be like. Sometimes it's not always the truth. And this is what I got to say is, this has to be the memory of your experience when you share it. Because for most people, it becomes an illusion, because they may listen to other people. People share their experiences so much, and they engulf themselves in other people's experiences, that they almost share it like it's a reality. But that's okay. But you got to remember, that's somebody else's experience that you're sharing. So when we read the books, and we pick up the books, and we listen and pay attention, and maybe feel something from sharing your experience of somebody else's experience is not necessarily yours. So go out and live it. Do what you do if you wanted to have what it is, whatever it is you want to have. Does this make sense, Pete?
Absolutely. You mentioned Donny there, obviously, and I'm just wondering, is experience and a mentor, I mean, are they intrinsically linked? Is one equal to the other?
The experience that was shared, and that's a great question, actually, and because he was a great confidant to me, and actually he was a magnificent mentor, and because he had 20 years experience on me, right? Because he was just over 20 years older than me, so therefore he had 20 years experience on me. And some of the things when we met 22 years ago, some of the things I was doing, he had already done. So I believe at that point, even 22 years ago, I had gained enough experience to be an experienced novice, and to be able to say, "Okay, Donny, tell me and show me. Show me what you've done. What would you have done? And then tell me what could go wrong in your opinion based on your experience, so I know what to do." So again, I go back and I find those people with experiences. So yes, without a shadow of a doubt, the experience that comes from mentors. Again, if you're going to choose a mentor, you choose somebody who has that experience. Because remember, the when I talked about those 5 questions that enable independent thought, the first question I have to ask myself is, what don't I know? Right? I have an idea. I have something that I want to achieve, something that maybe I want to overcome, something I want to make happen, something I want to make my reality. So for in order that to happen, what don't I know about this? So I figure out what I don't know. And then I figure out what's important to know. Remember the third one, who has the experience? So yeah, Donny would have been a great mentor. I would go to him and say, Donny, you have 20 years experience on me. And in my journey, he would have learned a lot from me too, because he was an experienced novice. He believed he could learn something. And sometimes it's not that you learn something new. You might just learn something you forgot. You might learn something that you need to do that you stopped doing because somebody else shared an experience with you to change your way of thinking about it. So it's not that you don't know, but asking those questions and finding somebody who has the experience of being able to translate and communicate it to you. And Donny is one. I've had so many, and of course I've been talking about Donny recently, and we lost him exactly 1 month ago today. So he's very fresh in my mind. And but absolutely, the experience that is shared from a good mentor, and a good mentor is an experienced novice. They don't think they know it all, but they have researched it. They've paid attention. They have strategized. They have looked at what works, what doesn't work, and they know too when to sit and let people go through the experience, good or bad. They know when the right time to intervene, and they also know that sometimes if you can't change somebody's mind, that you can't force your opinion on somebody. You have to allow them to discover it and experience it for themselves. So they come back with an understanding again of those that independent thought. Because as a mentor, and this is what I do. This is what I love doing. I spend my life doing this. I understand that the most important thing here is independent thought. It's my clients. It's their independent thought that matters more than mine. I will guide them through the processes based on experience. I will share with them strategy. I will share with them from what doesn't work based on experience. But I will also share with them how to make it work based on experience. So when you're looking for again, I talk to people about who are looking for mentors, and I mean this respectfully, because everybody out there wants to make a difference. I find most people want to make a difference. Okay, and then other people just want to make money. Right? Nothing wrong with either, by the way. But I always say that choose, if you want a mentor, choose one that wants to do both. Right? Choose one that wants to do both. That they really want to make a difference, and they want to make enough money to make a difference. So, an experienced mentor. I mean, we all talk about, the wise old man, right? I mean, I've yet to hear anybody say, I got great advice from a very wise young man. Or, maybe maybe we should pay attention to the wise young people too, because there are plenty of them, by the way, you know. But I have found again in my experiences, the people who have lived through it, who've been there, right, right now, right, about this current situation, and they tend to be scary and a whole lot. And then when we get into having conversation and questions, and then they start telling me about, remember when TB was a big issue here in Ireland, and the losses, and they've come through it and the things they've done. And then I hear people talk about stories that might have been shared with them, and people who went through multiple recessions, and how their experience of coming through them. And some of these people suffer great losses, by the way. Wasn't it? They all persevered and persevered. And it was all losses. But because, as I said, they chalk it down to experience and what they learn from it, they prepare differently when the next one is coming. They can almost preempt what might go wrong. Remember, that's one of the questions. You can almost preempt it, so you prepare for it differently. So therefore, you do things differently, and you create a complete different experience. Sometimes people, when they talk to me and they say, how are you getting on? And I say, absolutely fantastic. People are going, well, how could you be? You not realize what's going on in the world? So yeah, I'm having a wonderful experience through this. Some people don't get it, and I understand that. So I don't try to enforce that on other people, but I want to, for me, it's important that I create enough for them and I communicate it enough for them and translate it in a way that it helps them create their own independent thought. And sometimes it means sitting there and paying attention. Sometimes it means asking questions. And in particular, Donny had that incredible gift of listening and listening with intent. And to use the term you've heard me use, which I learned from him and I've shared before, he would sit back and go, okay, let me sit with that for a while. And then we will have a conversation. He would say, we were discussing here, upon mature reflection, I think this could be the best way. And we would find a way to deliver that ownership back to the other person. When I deliver what I deliver, I have no right to take ownership of what I deliver. But the experiences that I've had and experiences that I enjoyed and the experience I continue to enjoy, usually I find that they resonate with most people in some ways. So I can share that experience and somebody says, Pat, how do you do this? How do you get over it? I can share my strategies and techniques based on my experience from the past and what I've done, what I've achieved, what I didn't like. Right? And the days that I felt overcome with stress, maybe, or discomfort. So usually I figure out, well, what don't you know? What do you need to know? What is it that you want to do first? Let's get clarity on that. Then back to those 5 questions that enable that independent thought. What don't you know? What is it you're looking for? What's the answer you're looking for? And when you come up with all these different answers and we strategize and we brainstorm, I go, well, what I do, I may not ask the question directly. I may not say to somebody, what's important to know? I'll ask that in different ways. I will discover for them and I'll help them discover which of these things are important for them to know. And then in some cases, I may have to find somebody else's experience in certain areas, or I will share my experience. Go wrong, right? We know that sometimes middles are difficult, right? I think it's Cantor's law that says middles can be difficult. Everything in the middle can look like a failure. Simply because you're traveling a road that you haven't traveled before. So you're now a novice again. So what might go wrong? So we prepare for what potentially go wrong. And we only get that information from experienced novices. And then we go, okay, who might be impacted by this decision? I don't necessarily mean impacted in a negative way. I'm looking for the opposite, actually. Who might be impacted in a positive way by this decision? Because that's going to drive you on. That's going to create an experience of joy and happiness and fulfillment and wonder, and that's what drives you on. That's what makes you do whatever it is you want to do. And it's only when you experience that will you really give it your all. And again, so the experience is part of what you feel. The feeling is part of your experience. The knowledge, the journey, your learnings is all experience. I believe that this life is just an experience. Everything we're doing, everything, the reason we're here is to experience more stuff, more things, more joy, more happiness. And along the way, we don't discover that, it's all happiness, it's all joy, you know. So yeah, everybody you learn, everybody is your mentor. Everybody is your mentor. Life is your mentor. Things that are going on in the world right now as part of your mentor, as part of your experience. But bear in mind, for anybody who's here, who's watching it and listening or reading this, you might be looking at your life in the future and you're talking to your children and your grandchildren. And when you share your experiences, they come from memory, right? And you will experience the ones that you remember most, the ones that had the greatest impact on you. So if you want to, and not only that, I know I share my dad's story. I celebrate my dad's life, right? Because he's no longer with us. I celebrate his life. I celebrate Donny's life and I talk about Donny. And I celebrate and I share the experience, the positive experiences, the funny experiences that I've had. And because I share those experiences, people can take them on as almost being like their own. They remember them. They remember those stories based on the experience that I've shared. So therefore, they've had an experience, but a memory of an experience maybe. That makes sense? So make it memorable. Create the experience for you and for other people, and you will never want for anything. That's a choice.
When you're goal setting or visualizing,
Mhm.
should that be done from experience or imagination?
Well, see, what is imagination, Pete? Is probably a reflection of the experience that you want to achieve, right? And it's just imagination to me is I always say when I visualize, I go back to the future, right? So when I visualize, I'm actually in the experience. I'm living it. So when I visualize what I want to achieve and what I'm going to do and what I'm going to become, I actually create that experience. Now, some people will tell you, that's a bit nuts, and I might be sending out for people now with the white jackets, right? But you know what has never failed me? Has never failed me. Because when I create that experience, it all begins up here, right? And then you got to feel it down here. And when I visualize, when I sit there and I imagine and create the imagination of what could become a reality, I make it a reality. I create that experience that I feel that it's real right now. But I create that experience again as an experienced novice. Because even though I've created, I know that this is a new journey and I have to learn more. I have to get involved in that process. But I know what it's going to feel like when I get there, and that drives me on like nothing else. So, when you create the imagination and you bring the imagination, you connect it with your experience and the feeling of the experience. But because remember, your experience is based on your memory of a feeling, right? So when you say, I experienced pain before. Okay, what's pain? Well, pain is pain. Well, what's pain? Well, pain is, how do I explain pain? Maybe actually, Pete, can you tell me what pain is? Maybe you can help me out here. Like, if you've experienced pain, what's pain? It's a feeling, right? It's a sense of something. Okay, so let's turn it the other side. Well, I've experienced love. Well, what's love? It's a feeling. Okay. Now you say, well, I have a memory of love. Well, okay, what do you remember about love? Well, I remember other people being in love. Okay, but how did you recognize that it was love? Oh, because I could see their behavior, etc., right? Oh yeah, and what do you think that felt like? So when we understand the feelings and how we attach them, so for me, when I want to create that experience, I create the experience. So I'm there, I'm in it, and I'm living in that very moment. And therefore, my brain gets excited and it starts looking for the journey. I start looking for the route to that fulfillment. I searches because I do it frequently, and I create a very strong feeling around that visualization to make it a reality. And guess what? The experience is the journey getting there, but I'll get there, and I get the experience of everything along the way, the ups and the downs, the do's and the don'ts, the can and the can'ts. I'll experience them all, and I welcome them all. And I use that experience to work in my favor. So if you're going to visualize, create the experience, feel it, make it real.
Experience is like the eighth wonder of the world, isn't it, really?
Well, if that's what you feel, if that's the experience you're having, absolutely. You know, like, again, look, what is experience? What is it really? I mean, what are we looking for? Purpose, is it? You know, are we looking for purpose? And we got to think, you know, like, purpose of life could be experience. It's going through those experiences and learning and living from them and growing from them and sharing them. And I mean, we've been doing this for thousands of years, by the way. This is nothing new. I think it's important that people recognize it now, and recognizing how their experiences, the ones that they've had and the ones they haven't had yet, are just part of your growth, it's a part of who you are. Not part of who you're going to become, it's part of who you are. Because you can't wait for those experiences to become who you want to become. You got to become it now. You got to be the best you can be right now. And enjoy the experience of being the best you can be. The experiences that may come with that. Don't wait for the experience to become who you want to become. Become it and enjoy the experience. And I guess we could leave you with a thought, and I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt that said that the purpose of life is to live it, to taste experience to the utmost, to reach out eagerly and without fear for newer and richer experience. So I want to leave you with this thought. When we serve, we experience. We experience when we teach. We teach when we learn. And when we learn, our lives are permanently changed. And as our lives are changed, we are enriched beyond our wildest dreams. Enjoy the experience of life.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, Pat.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been an experience.
I love the experience. And thank you for it.
Until the next.
Look forward to that too.